This is our second screenshot video for the first 2 weeks of the course, and we are now into the material in Chapter 2, Agreement. I've divided it up into two parts, so this will be Part 1. And we noted in the introductory kind of material that one of the elements or requirements of a valid contract is agreement. And so it's this chapter where we explore agreement in depth. And as I noted earlier in the first screenshot video and in the notes, the law of contracts looks at agreement by analyzing the concepts or the tools of analysis known as offer and acceptance. And we could say that an agreement equals a valid offer that has been effectively accepted. I also note that in terms of the vocabulary that surrounds offer and acceptance, we say that the party that has extended an offer is known as the offeror, and the party or parties to whom the offer has been extended is known as the offerees. So if I were to make you a valid offer, which we'll get to soon, to enter into a contract, I'm the offeror, and you as the person to whom I extended the offer is known as the offeree. One point we could make is that I might make you an offer and you might counter. In other words, I offer to sell you something and you say something like, well, I'm not prepared to spend that much money, but I will buy the item from you for a lesser price. Well, what we have just done is obviously enter into negotiations, but we've also flipped our roles. So I was once the offeror, but when you made what's known as a counter offer, you become the offeror, and I am now the offeree. And we'll take a look at this a little bit more later, but that just gives us a feel for what we're going to be doing. But we start out by looking at the requirements of a valid offer. And we can identify three requirements. The offeror, again, that's the person or party extending the offer, must have a serious intent to be bound by the terms of the offer. Number two, the terms of the offer must be reasonably certain or definite so that the parties in a court can ascertain, figure out, if you will, the terms of the contract that the offer is effectively accepted. And three, the offer must be communicated by the offeror to the offeree or offerees. So if we take a look at those three requirements of a valid offer, first we have serious intent to be bound by the terms of the offer. That's viewed through the prism of the reasonable person. In other words, what a reasonable person in the offeree's position would believe that the offer reflects a serious intent to be bound by its terms. If someone has a brand new Tesla and for some reason is having trouble with it, and out of anger or frustration says, I would sell this car for $5,000, I'm going to tell you that that's not going to be considered a valid offer, because a reasonable person would not believe that the party making that statement had a serious intent to be bound by the terms of the offer. Next, we have definite terms. So the offer must be reasonably understood as to contain all of the essential terms of the contract. So if I had a extra contracts book around and said to you, you know what, I am interested in selling you this book, that's not yet an offer because I haven't included the terms of the sale. And as I noted, the authors note the essential terms usually are the identification of the parties, identification of the subject matter of the proposed contract, the consideration to be paid, time of payment, delivery, or performance. So simply saying, again, I will paint your house if you want it to be painted, that's not a valid offer because we really don't have definite terms. And the last item, communication, which is probably obvious, but it's got to be communicated by the offeror to the offeree. I guess if we wanted to come up with an example, if I say to you, I will sell you this book for $25, and I say that, I make that communication only to you, a third person who overhears it is not had a valid offer extended to her because it wasn't communicated to her. What we then take a look at is the possibility that an offer might be irrevocable. In other words, once it's made, it can't be withdrawn, or it can't be withdrawn unless certain circumstances or conditions arise. So the traditional way that an offer becomes irrevocable is by way of an actual contract between the offeror and the offeree, in which the offeror agrees to keep the offer open for a fixed period of time in exchange for a consideration. And this is known as an option contract. And I have an example there for you. A makes an offer to B, and B is not in a position to accept, but wants to make certain that the offer will be open for a certain period of time. A and B may agree that A will keep the offer open in exchange for a payment made by B. Sometimes it might be that the payment, but that's going to be up to the agreement of the parties, that the payment might be considered part of the purchase price if we're looking at a purchase. But in any event, once the payment is made, we have the option contract, and that's what consideration that the offeror has received. Doesn't have to give it back in exchange for the offeror's agreement to keep the offer open for a period of time. In New York, so this isn't going to be in the book, but in New York, another way that an offer can be irrevocable is if it is extended in a writing and the writing states that it's open. Every so often when I'm doing these, I get interrupted unavoidably, and so there's going to be a little bump now and then, and that just happened. But we're now at termination of the offer. I'm sorry, let me back up. In New York, as an alternative to an option contract, an offer will be irrevocable for a period of time set forth in the offer, a reasonable period of time, if no time is set forth, provided the offer is in a writing signed by the offeror. That really extends out the circumstances for when an offer might be irrevocable. Now we're at termination of the offer, and the traditional way to organize this is an offer is terminated by either action of the parties, category number 1, or general category number 2, by operation of law. And as I note, when you hear the term operation of law, that just means that there are legal rules that require under certain circumstances, that an offer is to be terminated. Now, termination by action of the parties. And again, let's just pause here for a second. We've got an offeror, and that offeror has an offer that's been made to an offeree. What can the parties do that might terminate the offer? And by the way, the significance of that is that if the offer has been terminated before it's been accepted, then we're not going to have an agreement. So one way the parties can terminate an offer is that the offeror provided it's not an irrevocable offer, can withdraw the offer. And that is known as revocation. A second way that the parties can terminate an offer is that the offeree rejects it. In other words, the offeree states that he or she is not accepting the offer. And when we see a case where the offeree submits a counteroffer, that has the same effect as rejection. So we've got revocation by the offeror, rejection by the offeree, and if there's a counteroffer made by the offeree, that also terminates the offer. And if we're going to have an agreement, it's under these circumstances where the offer has been terminated by the party's action, then we're going to have to see circumstances where a new offer has emerged. One way, of course, a new offer can emerge is by way of the counteroffer. When we look at legal rules, operation of law, that can terminate an offer, we see lapse of time. In other words, an offer will terminate if the offerer states it's open for a certain period of time, and if that period of time has gone by and there's been no acceptance, then the offer has been terminated. So if I say to you that the offer is good for 30 days, and the 30 days, and you're the offeree, and the 30 days go by and there's been no acceptance, then by the lapse of time, expiration, if you will, the offer has been terminated. If there isn't any time period for acceptance, in other words, I make you an offer, but I don't tell you how long it's going to be open, then the law says that the offer terminates at the end of a reasonable period of time. That's a question of fact, but let's say that somebody walks into my office at school and says, you know that offer you made 5 years ago to sell that extra contracts book for $30, I accept. Well, what we could agree, I'm certain, is that 5 years is an unreasonable period of time for the offer to have remained open. Another way that we can see the offer terminate is if the subject matter of the proposed contract has been destroyed. So I'm going to sell you a car, or I've made an offer to sell you a car, and while that offer is pending, the car gets totaled in an accident. Another way we see termination by operation of law is if we have death or incompetence of either the offeror or offeree. So I make you an offer, and while it's pending, I die. The offer's been terminated. Someone makes an offer to me and I die. I'm the offeree in that case. Again, the offer has been terminated. And our last item is something known as supervening illegality. And that simply means after the offer has been made, the law changed and the subject matter of the proposed contract is now illegal. So there are times, for example, when the FDA has made certain over-the-counter drugs, meaning you don't have a prescription, illegal to sell without a prescription. And so if there's an offer to sell, this probably would be at the wholesale level, right? A manufacturer is offered to sell to Walgreens so many lots of a over-the-counter drug. While that offer is pending, the FDA steps in and says you can no longer sell that product unless a person comes in with a prescription. Then we have a case of supervening illegality and the offer has been terminated. So this will end this screenshot video.